Welcome back. The competitive intelligence report is going to be really important in terms of figuring out both why I did as I did, and also it's going to give me some ideas or some insight on what I might do to do better. I'm going to go through the North America result in detail. Um, Usually, but not always, if you look in one region, it holds true for the trends tend to hold true for all four regions. That's not always the case. For the practice round, I'm just going to look at one region, and I want to make a point that I noticed at least Team B, my team, we ran a different star shoe out of different factories in different markets. By all means, you can do that. Um, you're just making it more complicated for yourself if you choose to do that. And I'll show you, for example, an area where they have made it more complicated, potentially made it more complicated for themselves by producing one shoe in the North American plant and a different shoe in the Asia Pacific plant. So you can do that. I don't know that I think it's ever an advantage to do that, but perhaps it is. It's clearly a disadvantage um, in terms of trying to figure out how you're going to handle the logistics. Actually, let me back up. I can think of some subtle ways that maybe running slightly different shoes, more of in terms of the number of models as opposed to the stars, might be advantageous. But in general, I'd like you to approach it like you do the same. So when I look at this, I start in the internet, even though the internet isn't as important. And the first place I look is the market share. So to quote that old management book, "Who moved my cheese?" Now I'm looking and saying, how much cheese did I eat, and who else ate my cheese? The average market share for everybody, and you can see that way over in the far right side, is 16.7%. So in internet, I lost a little bit of market share. Well, who ate my cheese? Team C did, Team D did. This isn't enough for me to worry about. So C and D were the big movers. Well, how did they do that? Well, I had $77 for a 7-star shoe. That was the most expensive shoe in the industry. And I can see, for example, why C outdid me, because they had a better shoe at a much lower price. But you can also see that they induced channel conflict. They didn't price their shoe 140% over their wholesale price. So they're going to have issues next year in their number of retailers available. This year, everybody had 3,000, because what's going to happen to them is not only did C have low market share in the branded in the wholesale segment, they also induced a lot of channel conflict. So they're going to suffer next round with, in North America, having a lot less retailers. So frankly, eh, they may have made some good money in internet, but they're going to pay dearly for it in wholesale next year. So I'm not too worried about that. Team D, wow, they really cut their prices. They did not, however, have market conflict, channel conflict, because they're still over 140%. And I can see that they had both high in the internet and high in the branded. But what did Team D finish in? Last place is where Team D finished. So they probably underpriced their shoes and have very slim profit margins. That can be problematic, because if they continue to play that way, that's going to be challenging for anybody to make money. I'm hopeful that they're going to see that their prices were too low and that they're going to raise them next round, but I'm going to have to keep my eye on them, because they could be that irrational loser that drags industry profitability down for everybody. Um, so that's what happened there. But maybe next year in the internet segment, I might need to look at lowering my prices a little bit. Then I come down to the wholesale market segment and I look at market share again. Hey, I had really good market share. I'm up 3 points. Who else was up? Team D was up. We've already talked about them. Team F was up, way up at 23%. Okay. Now you see this yellow right here with the minus. That meant that I had people walking into the store to buy my shoes, and yet the retailers were out. They didn't have any shoes to sell them. being short 137,000 shoes all in all is not bad. That's not bad, to be honest with you. These numbers were all, you can see, because I overstimulated demand. Everybody else picked up some extra sales beyond what their initial demand was. You'll notice that these in some don't add to 137 though. So that is 23, 23 plus 35 is 58, 78, 84 plus 39, you can see is short of 137, and that's the way it'll work. So in some ways, when I'm trying to figure out who earned the cheese, what I need to do is look at retailer demand. And you can see in terms of retailer demand, there were only two companies that were close to my demand, Team D and Team F. So now I'm going to compare myself to D and F to see how I compared. All right, I was running a 7-star shoe, D of 4, F of 4. Okay, so no big surprise that my price is much higher than theirs. It's very hard to compare my price since I'm so far off of them. If I go compare myself, for example, to Team C, which had a much, much smaller demand than me, I look and say, all right, my price was 50, their price was 60, and they're only a star greater than me. And as a rule of thumb, a star is only worth usually at most about $2. So they're priced up quite a bit. Models are virtually the same. I had significantly more in advertising than they did, but it appears that the difference in price was really their primary problem here, probably not the difference in advertising. Although I spent a lot of money in advertising, I'm not sure, I'm going to have to check whether I got my bang for the buck there. This is an interesting comparison between D and F. They both are selling 4-star shoes. F actually had the greater demand, but notice their price is $10 a shoe higher. So what does that tell you? These guys cut their price so far. Also, they have a lot more models, 305 models. So here in the big three, you can see that price much lower, models much higher, and you can see that they had a little bit higher demand. You get down into advertising, they spent 3 million more in advertising, and the rest of the stuff fairly close, and these get down to be not that impactful. So interesting constellation, low price, low advertising, low models, much higher price. And again, you can sit here and play the math and figure out who kind of got the best of whom. Here, you don't know exactly what their cost was to break out that, to make up those 150 model difference. But on the advertising, you can see, for example, that they sold about 1.7 million shoes on average each. So he charged $3 more. He paid 3 million more in advertising across those 1.7 million shoes. So he paid about $2 more per shoe in advertising. Well, there was a $10 difference in price. So on that alone, he came out way ahead. Now, this difference in the models is pretty significant too. But again, I know this team came in first. I know this team lost money, or I'm sorry, didn't lose money, but didn't make much money. So, I'm getting a feeling for this. So, I'm at 249 models, which is right on the industry average, a little bit above. I've got a good star advantage, and my price is a little bit low. So I got to tell you, in North America, I like what I did. I'm going to have to go in and check my profitability, but I'm pretty happy. I grew market share. I did it at a decent price. Might want to raise my price a little bit. Might want to reduce my advertising a little bit and look more at maybe increasing the number of models. But again, it has to do with fit because this is my position. My position needs to be intentional, and I want to make sure my value chain fits that. But I walk away from this and I go, I'm pretty happy with this. For me and Team B, this looks pretty good. I look over here at Team A and say, what happened to them? Well, they charge $60 for 3-star shoes. So they're just way out of line on their price. They made money this year, but they didn't sell a lot of shoes. So all those shoes that were manufactured, next year they're only going to be a 2-star shoe, and they are simply not going to sell unless they go in and do dramatic prices. And since they have such low market share, their number of retailers next round are going to be much lower. So that's why I say they have dug themselves a hole that's going to be very painful to get out of. It's doable. They're going to have to do it. It's just going to be painful such that I know that probably next year, not a good year for them. Doesn't mean they're done, just means they're going to take a hit next year. Now, into the private label. How was the big winner in private label? $28.65. I can see that the top bid was up here around $32, so I probably could have bid several more dollars here and still have sold all my shoes, because as it was, we had almost a perfect match between demand and offer. It won't usually work out that way. So I left a little bit of money on the table here. It's the way it goes, but I made money. I made $4 or $5 a shoe, so that's not bad. Now you can see this map into who's where. Here I am. It says Team C is here with me, and this is price and SQ, and over here is product line breadth. So they had a little bit higher price, and this is a little bit goofy because usually the size of the bubble shows market share, but that's not right because my market share is much bigger than theirs, so I'm not sure how it's sizing that bubble. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I have to tell you down here, oh, I'm sorry, this is in the internet. I can answer my own question. Here I see, here I am in Team B, Team C, much smaller market share. So the size of the bubble is the market share. I don't pay a lot of attention to what the computer identifies as strengths and weaknesses, because you could change them more to say above industry average, below industry average. So you can see I have an above industry average SQ rating, an above average advertising budget. I have a competitive weakness of retail price because I'm above average, and everybody else is offering free shipping and internet and I'm not. Those may not be strengths and weaknesses at all. That may be the way I've decided for it to be. So I don't get it all into strengths and weaknesses because position, trade-off, fit. This may be some trade-offs. This may be how I'm fitting things into my overall gestalt of my strategy. So don't get hung up on that. Again, you can look at all four regions, and you're going to need to look at all four regions. I can just very quickly do a snapshot. 3 teams ran out, but again, these were all pretty good amounts to run out by. 16.9, so I'm right at the industry average. Who ate my cheese? Well, in here it was D and F again. E, still pretty reasonable though. Remember I said I got to keep my eye on them. In private labels, C was the only winner, and they won it at a very high price. That's nice. They didn't sell many shoes though, and you can see here the Walmarts and Targets of the world were not happy because they wanted to make 1.2 million shoes, and they only in fact were able to buy 190,000. Asia Pacific, here Team F ran out of shoes. I hate to see 3 digits start with a 2. Down in the internet, I'm sorry, the private label segment, I got 100% of the market share, and a couple of people that bid pretty big, and I got it all. Woohoo, good for me. Maybe not, because at $19.99, I made like 50 cents a shoe. That's not a very good profit margin. By the same token, I could have priced it, let's see, $26.56. Team D put in a pretty healthy amount at $8.04. So if I was going to get a good number of shoes, I needed to sell them cheaper than $26.56. So I could have, with perfect knowledge, bid $26.55, gotten just as many shoes, but made an additional $6 per shoe. But you never know that in advance. And then lastly, Latin America. Again, Team A was the big winner in internet. Sold 1 million shoes at $35 a share. Frankly, This explains why their performance was as good as it was, because they probably made um, $8 to $10 million right here, and that explains why their financial outcome was as good as it was. Um, and but again, you're going to want to look at each of these three regions in detail, but I don't need to walk you through the process in detail each time. You can see here in Latin America, I only have a 5-star shoe, whereas in North America, I had a 7-star shoe, so I'm making life a little bit complex on myself. So at the end of the competitive intelligence report, I should have a really good feeling for why the market share went as it went. And now I'm starting to do my how am I going to do better process, because I'm seeing, all right, what am I going to need to do to make my market share what I want it to be? And I've talked about this is where you want to chart what your competitors are doing, who you think your major competitors are, and start making some decisions. All right, in this region, I think I need to raise my price by this. Maybe this is how I need to approach the media buy differently next year. So we're the why we did, and we're also thinking hard about how we're going to do better, because we've got a lot of the information that we need to draw those conclusions. One last report to go through, and that's the company operating report. Join me for that in just a minute.